Right. Hi, everyone. I'm Jessica. Thank you so much for taking your time to come to my session on design and tech in China. And of course, thank you to Oslo for having me. I'll be speaking a little bit about how Chinese culture and government influence have affected UX design trends in China. We'll take a look at how apps break Western design conventions and how Chinese users interact with brands within these apps. So I'll go through a couple things today. So first, what are super apps and what do they look like? I'll quickly go over WeChat, the biggest super app in China. And second, how do Western and Chinese cultural differences affect tech and design? I'll dive into how these differences help shape the tech ecosystem within China. So just a little bit about me. I'm Jessica Shen. I'm an experienced designer and product designer in New York City. Right here, we really got the whole World Trade Center and everything here. So it's been really great kind of presenting for you guys. I currently work at Disney, but I previously worked at RGA where I designed products and systems for a variety of clients. In 2018, I had the opportunity to build out the UX discipline in Asia Pacific for RGA. So while I was there, I traveled quite a bit. And a lot of the major cities that I visited all had their own app ecosystem. They all felt pretty similar. You have your ride sharing app, a search engine, a chat app, and so on. And a lot of us actually shared a lot of apps. So many of these systems follow what we have here in the USA, and I'm sure similar to what you have in Norway. But China, where I spent most of my time, was actually a whole other system. And the main reason for that was the super apps. Super apps or aggregation apps are applications that act kind of like their own operating systems. They're apps that have all-in-one functionality where you can do nearly anything. And with these apps, you're often able to open mini apps, which are more commonly referred to as mini programs that have their own set of functionality. So for example, in one super app, you might be able to open a mini program to order food, shop for clothing, chat for a friend, all without leaving that one app. What's amazing about these apps is that you never actually have to download anything to use a mini program. All you need is that one super app. China has several super apps, but the most popular super app is WeChat, a messaging platform that most Chinese use pretty much daily. It's the primary form of communication as most messaging apps are blocked. But in China, WeChat is more than just a chat app. If you think about everything that you do on your phone now, you could probably do it all without ever leaving WeChat. So let's take a really quick look into what WeChat is. So again, at initial glance, you might think it's just a typical messaging app with maybe a few extra functions. It looks very similar to WhatsApp or Facebook Messenger. You can chat with friends, send voice messages, or create groups and post to a newsfeed. WeChat also has its own payment system. So similar to something like Venmo, users can link their bank accounts and send each other money. What really made WeChat a super app is actually its integration with third parties to create mini programs. So these mini programs could use the payment systems and all the different things within WeChat, and then essentially have other apps within the system. You can tap into any of these and open a mini program. These are essentially full apps all within WeChat. So it could be anything from ordering a car, ordering food, paying your electricity bill, your phone bill, or buying a movie ticket. Pretty much anything you can think of. Here's an example of what a mini program might look like. This is an e-commerce site similar to Amazon. You have your sports apps. And while all of these mini programs typically are lighter versions of apps, they typically provide full app functionality. So now within WeChat, I can do pretty much everything that I would want to do in my phone, all without leaving WeChat or downloading a single thing. Anyone can create a mini program too. It's not a whole lot different from creating an app for iOS or Android, except that these mini programs are templated. They're incredibly easy to build. One of the things that makes this exponentially more powerful is the QR code. Every day while I was in China, I was using these codes to make payments with WeChat Pay. And it's not just large businesses doing this. It's everywhere that money is potentially involved. Anywhere from street stalls, someone selling yams on the corner, and even the homeless. They've started to use these QR codes as ways to help get money. Brands also use QR codes a lot. They can be used to open pages or even mini programs. This has opened huge opportunities in online to offline interactions and vice versa. And this has actually allowed a lot of businesses to change the way they work. This example isn't from WeChat. It's a different one from a different competitor called Hema. But at a restaurant, you can scan, open a mini program, order, and have food come straight to your table. No conversation or wait staff needed. And you don't need to download anything for this. It's all within a super app. WeChat is just one of many apps that are like this. Some apps like Alipay, Baidu, Meituan, Taobao all have super app level technology. So this really asks the question, why don't we have super apps like this everywhere? The idea of super app functionality actually isn't new to Western companies. Google and Facebook have both tried, primarily with game apps. However, none of them really seem to take off. So why haven't they? Why are super apps so successful in China, and how did they come to be this way? To first understand how super apps began, we have to look at the tech environment in China compared to the Western tech environment. A key differentiator is the Great Firewall. In China, the government has censored most of the internet with its firewall. China's made it illegal to use many apps and sites that most of the world uses daily. This is just a sample of what's been censored. You'll notice that it might be a lot of apps that you probably use every day. The firewall has caused a sort of tech vacuum in China, where its tech ecosystem could kind of develop in its own bubble. So during this time, much of China's everyday digital technology kind of fell behind. However, those that had visibility into the rest of the world could observe new tech that worked or didn't work. And so they built a lot of copycat apps. Basic needs were covered, like search, social media, and entertainment. Globally successful services were kind of created for the Chinese audience. For Google, there was Baidu. For Twitter, there was Weibo. YouTube, there was Youku, and many, many more. But China's tech actually isn't built up entirely of copycats. Because of the tech vacuum it's in, China's government had the opportunity to look at things from a more systematic point of view and invest in certain tech or even mandate apps that will most benefit their goals. They might, for example, push that to be their primary messaging app. Because everyone is on it, it becomes the best place to add new functionality that everyone might need, like paying your bills or checking your bank statement. And from there, more and more functionality gets added to it until what began as a copycat morphs into a huge super app. I attribute a lot of how this all happened to how culture influences design. So, of course, there are a lot of differences between Chinese and Western culture. It's not just the tech. We're different in our views towards family, our work ethic, ego, self-expression, and more. I pulled out three main points of difference that I believe contribute to much of why China's tech was able to evolve the way it did, primarily based around the differences in our mindset, our values, and how we perceive things. So first, let's take a look at mindset. Western culture is very individualist, while Chinese culture is very collectivist. So what does this mean? Here, we really focus on the individual goals and the individual person. We see ourselves as a free individual in the world. On the other hand, China is a collectivist culture. Collectivism focuses on the goals of the group and focuses more on the relationship rather than the self. Being singled out or different can seem wrong to someone who's from a collectivist culture. With collectivism, the goal is for everyone to help each other grow so that the group succeeds. This type of thinking is necessary for a country like China, where you have 1.4 billion people under one centralized government. In order to keep a sense of stability, it needs to be something that everyone upholds. And to achieve that, there needs to be a way to govern what people say and do. It's partially why surveillance works in China. You often see images like this in the media where Chinese citizens are being tracked on their behaviors, from what they buy at a grocery store or who they love to watch for entertainment. Many citizens have the mentality that public surveillance helps uphold the protection and standards of the community. For your everyday citizen, convenience and safety is worth that lack of privacy. Many people will keep a really low profile. And for the vast majority, many have this mentality that they almost have nothing to hide. If we compare this to the Western world, everything is built on individual freedom. So things like data privacy are extremely important. So an app like WeChat, which knows everything about you from the conversations you have with your friends to what you ordered at a restaurant, when you got dry clean, or messages that you sent to your boss, we would just run into so many privacy concerns. We can see, though, how this mindset was really helpful in a situation like the pandemic. China was able to quickly implement a contact tracing system where you can scan a QR code at every location you go. China's ability to track and somewhat control everyone's behavior has helped them quickly respond to infections and communicate to potentially infected citizens. Collectivism also means that people in China are more receptive to change. When the belief is that you're part of a group or a system, everyone must adapt in order to coexist and ensure the success of the group. With a strong sense of nationalism in China, there's an excitement that surrounds new tech and new systems. And so there's more willingness to use and comply with these tools, even if it comes at the cost of privacy and independence. Plus, they're seeing the benefits. Over the past few years, the speed at which China has changed has grown in tech is incredible. It's largely due to the speed at which everyone's open to adapting and trying different things. As a result, collectivism also means that communication and social perception are at the forefront. Collectivist cultures really value the relationships between people and how you're seen within a group. Group approval is always emphasized. Direct lines to anyone and everyone are important. While this may not seem like something very different from our own Western mindsets, I think this is actually what's most relevant to designers in terms of how brands exist online in China. In some ways, because of collectivism, brands and tech are brought down to your level. Brands can feel more like a friend and less of a larger identity. We can really see this in how brands live inside of a chat app. On an app like Wechat, brands can communicate with you directly. Rather than seeing something in ads, it's almost like you have the personal phone number of Nike or Chanel right in your app. So a lot of brands will use things like characters to act as brand personalities and strengthen this relationship and tie the brand to this fictional person. So when it comes to collectivist thinking, there's a lot that affects tech. But while things like views towards surveillance and the willingness to change are huge drivers of tech, it's more relevant to the things like super apps, how super apps are so widely accepted. So for designers or business owners who are looking to build in China, what's important to keep in mind is customer service and digital brand presence. It's really about group approval, high degrees of communication, and social context. So let's talk about our values when it comes to tech. In the West, we really value research and knowledge. And in China, we really value application and implementation. This, again, isn't to say that Westerns don't value implementation or that China doesn't value knowledge, but that the priority is a little bit different. In the West, the priority is given to investigation and discovery of new tech, often with the intent to push the limits of a concept. In China, the priority is given to reaching a functional goal or using tech for a specific implementation or practical intention. If you think about this in terms of individualist and collectivist mindsets, this actually makes a lot of sense. With individualist thinking, there's an inherent curiosity to go find and discover new knowledge or new ideas. With collectivist thinking, it's how we take information and use it to better the group and give it a practical usage. This really aligns with how China approached implementing tech after its firewall. They were able to see the technology that was happening in the West, take it, and essentially leapfrog over the implementation in the US. This, of course, is changing a lot, since now China is funneling funding towards research of new tech, really for the sake of implementation or the purpose of their applications. How tech changed in China during the pandemic also exemplifies how quickly they're able to implement these changes to increase convenience. Contactless vehicles made deliveries, and even hospitals started having drones to help monitor patients and staff. In China, all of this comes down to putting ultra convenience as a priority. Systems are really designed to be as practical, as fast, and as convenient as possible, sometimes with the sacrifice of things like privacy and data. For example, with facial recognition, the US has incredible technology, but it's not currently used in a lot of situations where you can really increase convenience. In China, I could simply scan my face to board a plane. I never had to pull out my passport. It's incredible and extremely convenient, but something like this would take forever to be implemented outside of China, considering the amount of regulations and barriers this would need to go through, and not to mention the views toward privacy that this would trigger. All-in-one functionality is also the ultimate convenience, and it's something that is applied everywhere in China. It's not just apps doing this. Mall culture, for example, is everywhere. There's huge malls that have everything you need, from gyms to movie theaters to grocery stores, top restaurants. Whereas in the West, things are a little bit more separated. There's a lot more localized places that you can go. Super apps, of course, guide users everywhere, meaning that they can know you best and provide the best experience. Apps like Wechat and Taobao essentially have all of your information through their entire ecosystem, which makes it incredible for personalization, but also means that a singular company has all of your information. If we look at our own e-commerce behaviors, to make a purchase in America, and I'm sure in Norway as well, we use a bunch of apps to make a decision, from research to learning to the actual purchase itself. In China, you do this all in one app. For buying something, it's most likely Taobao, a shopping platform. It's actually become a sort of entertainment experience in itself. People actually open Taobao just to browse and watch videos for fun. On the platform, influencers can post and stream videos using products or react to stuff while wearing a certain outfit. Taobao has even worked with brands to create their own streaming series that includes short shows that might feature products that you can buy. So with a platform like Taobao, you can pretty much do everything on the platform itself, both as a merchant and as a consumer. What's especially powerful, though, comes after you've made a purchase and we get to cross-selling and upselling. Because every part of that e-commerce journey happens in one app, a platform like Taobao can give you better recommendations than any other platform. One thing to note, though, with all of these all-in-one super apps is the circumstances in which they were made. For more organic growth in a place like America or Norway, we already have apps that are the best in each of these aspects of e-commerce. It'd be difficult for us to completely shift, even if any of those apps had all the functionality of something like Taobao. While apps like Instagram and Amazon are starting to have functionality like this, they'll never really become that full one-stop shop the way that Taobao is, simply because we already have a precedent in our minds about what each of these apps are and what they're meant to do. It's potentially too late for there to really be a super app here. And so in the Western world, when you're building something, it's the norm to build from scratch. In China, consider building it to fit an existing system like WeChat or Taobao. The infrastructure and the audience is already there. There's less of a need to build from the ground up. If anything, that actually makes it harder to succeed. So when it comes to application, start by joining part of an existing system. But again, consider your privacy needs based off of what you're doing or what type of system you're building. There may be higher needs for privacy than can be included in something like WeChat. So finally, the last direction, perception. So this is really how we see the world. America and the West is really considered to be relatively low context, while China is considered very high context culture. What this means is that for low context, Americans tend to look at objects and isolate from their context. This even applies to language. English is very explicit and direct. High context refers to focusing on an object within its context. So communication tends to be more implicit, roundabout, and include more nonverbal cues. You often can't really understand the subject of a sentence without hearing the full thing. I found this really interesting in how it's affected UI design. I'll show a couple examples of sites in the US and China from the same companies. If you take a look at McDonald's, for example, the Western site is very simple. There's one main thing to look at. The Chinese site, on the other hand, doesn't really seem to have much hierarchy. You see a bunch of deals and options, maybe a link to open on WeChat. It's a little all over the place. Chinese design is actually often criticized for how visually cluttered and chaotic it is. You see a ton of sites like this where information is crammed in. There's no hierarchy, but that doesn't mean that it's bad design. These sites actually aren't a whole lot different than the way sites were designed in the early 2000s of the free internet. But they've stayed relatively the same in China, and some have even gotten more cluttered. And there's a couple of reasons for this. One is that Chinese users have simply adapted and gotten used to it. Some people argue that it's because the Chinese language is more dense and people are really used to seeing dense information. But I think the biggest contributor is high and low context in how we view the subject of a page. There was actually a study done on Google's homepage that was pretty interesting. It mentioned that in various lab studies done for tracking eye movement on Google, American Google customers went straight for the search box, whereas Chinese users kind of skipped around the page looking for something interesting, like little surprises and visual information. So Western design really prioritizes a more simple, structured experience. We really expect our apps to guide us somewhere step by step. On the other hand, Chinese design prioritizes a more upfront, direct experience. Users would rather have all the options shown upfront, even if it means a crowded page. They'd rather know all the things that they can do. So quantity and clutter is really indicative of a richer experience and more functionality, not clutter. In general, there's more browsing and this sense of more discovery-driven chaos. And in some ways, this is actually a difference in how we view convenience. Here, we want less mental load so we can focus on a subject one step at a time. It's convenient because we don't have to look at so many things. In China, we want less steps, so seeing everything at once is a good thing. So when it comes to design in China, white space is wasted space. It's showing that you've got space for a little bit more functionality. With a country as large as China growing as quickly as it has in the tech sector, we can really expect to see a lot of exciting initiatives and advancements over the next few years and months. Just recently, we've seen how they utilize the QR code, from codes on drones to even a floating QR code in the sky. So as our technology and their technology starts to take on more and learn from each other, I'm excited to see how the future of design and technology evolves for different cultures. And that's pretty much it. Thank you so much for listening. I hope this really helped provide a picture of the tech landscape in China and how Chinese culture has helped it become what it is today. If you have any questions or are interested in chatting, feel free to reach out to me through email, LinkedIn, or through my website. Thanks so much.